Well, welcome and happy Mother's Day again. As I said, am delighted to be back from Melbourne. It was great to be in town with my sons before my middle son went back to Germany, and to stay in the house of friends who have been our friends since before our 30-year-old son was born. These are the friends who know you and still love you. And make fun of you and make those jokes about you. And when I was ordained in Hobart, there was a gathering at our house of all of those friends, our boys and their boys, and I believe there was much hilarity. I was on retreat, ordination retreat, but they were having a great time, retelling all of the stories about the things that I'd done, my exploits and mistakes, and there was great hilarity all around. This is the thing about family, isn't it? There's this knowing that allows us to be ourselves and to remember and to laugh and to celebrate, but also to love no matter what has happened. To love perhaps because of all of the other things that have happened. In the gospel today, Jesus is addressing people who do not love, who do not know, who are just there to try and sort out how they can be right. Turns out that this is a real enemy of love. That if we want to love, the best gift we can give is an apology and forgiveness. I think that's a lot easier as I've got older, because I've learned that the people who love me forgive me readily and I don't lose anything on the way. But this is the truth about Jesus. The work that he did on the cross was expressly so that we would know that we are loved and we are forgiven. Not so that we'd have a mark to live up to, not even so that we'd have an example to live by, although it's there, but rather that we would know that we are loved and we are forgiven. And because we are loved and forgiven, we are able to offer that to other people. We can be loving and we can be forgiving. It was my brother's 50th birthday last night. While Alison was in Melbourne celebrating a birthday of one of Shane and Kate's family, I was up here. I arrived on the plane, jumped on the train, went out to Eastwood and celebrated his 50th birthday. Now, he's 7 years younger than me, so you can work out how old I am from that. But I introduced him to a band called Cold Chisel, and he doesn't. His celebration was singing in a band Cold Chisel songs all night long. He did throw in one U2 song as an expression of love for his wife. Not sure if it was because it was a break from the Cold Chisel, but she was playing the keyboards in the back, so it was as much her fault as anyone's. And I've got to say, you know your friends when they'll sit around for not one but two whole sets of Cold Chisel, because my wife wouldn't. Hope she's listening. As he was playing, there was that prerequisite scrolling of photos from his history, his story, his boys, him when he had hair, me when I had hair, all sorts of photos that reminded us that our lives go through different paths. I want to depart from the gospel for a second and invite you to that very familiar psalm that we read, that we didn't read, that we will sing. If you turn over the page to hymn 10, The Lord's My Shepherd. Anyway, the Lord's my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me to quiet waters. I have been researching this a little, and I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of Israel, but it's not England. And we have anglicised a whole lot of the imagery that's in the Bible to our detriment. Because leading beside green waters feels like, even if we make it Australian, feels like going to a billabong and hanging out on some green pastures around a big, readily available waterhole. But in Israel, green pastures are the barren hillsides that are on the lee side, away from the wind, that collects the moisture of condensation on the rocks that have been hot all day, and as the air cools off, the hot rocks gather the water from the air and condense it, and grass grows up in the shadow of them. Not a whole field, not even like our lawn outside, but rather 5 or 6 shoots. That's the green pastures. And these are not flat areas, they're hillsides that are quite steep, and being rocky and loose rock, you can see the pathways around the hillside where the sheep and goats have walked to get around the hill to make their way up to the top. Not because the top is something to attain, but because they want to get all of the grass on the hill, because there's little enough of it, and grass, it takes a lot of grass to feed a sheep. So these sheep are going on these pathways, and in the Hebrew, which I know better than Greek, though I'm working on it, the pathways means circular ways, around and around and around. So he leads me on the circuitous path to find pastures green. Now, again, we're not in England. It's not all readily there. We don't just have a shepherd leaning back against the tree while the sheep make their way through all of that lush green grass. This is a stony path that is a circuitous way, and it is a search for nourishment in the midst of all of this other stuff, along a treacherous path that has been well worn by by sheep before, so that there's a bit of a ledge for them to walk along. For me, that then tells me a story about my discipleship. This is what it's like for me walking as a disciple of Jesus. I follow paths that are often circuitous, that seem repetitive, that require me to learn lessons over and over again, but follow in the footsteps of those who've gone before me and invite me to understand myself in the context of their journey and of the one who has led me on the way. Now, no doubt you're aware of the rod and the staff, that the rod is the discipline, the staff is the rescuing, with the hook on the end of it, kind of like they have on those stage acts where they pull someone off the stage. Well, pulling someone out of a hole, a sheep out of a hole, is done with the crook on that staff as well. So this pathway of discipleship is circuitous. It's hard work and it's often difficult. Let's go back to the gospel then. That family experience that I've had over these last weeks started off with a family house party. Should have been a great thing. Should have been lots of fun. My 3 boys with their 3 girls in our house, plenty of room for everyone, and we went on a bridge climb, and it was a beautiful, rainy, squally day, and they wouldn't let us out of it because they said, no, it's okay, you won't blow off, we've got you tied on. So not just onto the bridge, but into the schedule, and it was miserable. The next day we were heading out, which was a significant amount of the plan, to see my dad, because my son in Germany doesn't expect to be here to see him another time before he dies. We did a rat test before we went out, and we came up positive. Just 1 person to start with, and then 2 the next day when we got the PCR tests, and then with perfect timing, me, as you know, just before Easter, and then Alison straight after Easter. We did all of the locking down that we could do. And then as soon as we were finished with that, the government said, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So having seen Ben and Zach, just by opening the door, pushing the food in and running away, for a few days, we decided to go to Melbourne to spend some time with them, and it was great. Way too much eating out, a lot of fun and hilarity and telling of stories. But it's an important thing to note that in the middle of that, the boys were still brothers, and they still had their moments. And even though they were locked down together, Zach and Ben, well, frankly, the older brother, which is me in my family, the older brother can be a bit insufferable at times. And the middle brother, who in Ben's case is bigger, when he runs out of patience, is a little bit inclined to bonk him on the head, which he deserved, I'm going to say. I don't know what your experience of the Christian life is like. Does it resemble the circuitous route around the barren hill? Or does it resemble life in a family with brothers who are inclined a bit to squabble and to disagree and to exert themselves over one another? Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. My boys are my boys. I love them. I love hanging out with them. I love the girls that they hang out with. And I love that they love them. I love that they take experiences from their life with us and use it to gift other people with hospitality, loving outcasts and lonely people, drawing them into their family and making them part of the gang. This is the invitation to us. This is the invitation of Jesus' lifestyle, and his the way he walked around was that we might take on some of the characteristics of Jesus. Last night at Bruce's party, someone came up to me and said, "You're Bruce's brother, aren't you?" I said, "How did you know?" He said, "You look like twins." I said, "Well, you probably shouldn't tell him that." But my boys often get called twins. It's ridiculous. One's as skinny as a rake and this tall. The next one's broad like a linebacker, or like a prop, a rugby league prop, an AFL player. Big like this. Sorry, get mixed up between countries. And the other ones are shut inside playing video games all the time because that's his job, designing video games. So he's just little. How can they be twins or even triplets? There are characteristics that mark them out, and I suspect it's my mum's nose. But this is how it is for us too. Have you ever had someone come up to you and say, "Are you a Christian?" What would they know that? Because you've got red hair or a nice smile, or because you're generous, because you're kind? Is it the way you wear your fashion, or is it the way you wear your love? These are the marks of the family, aren't they? These are the marks of the family of God. So Jesus' work on the cross, that we would know that we are loved and forgiven, comes around as we understand what it's like to walk this circuitous path of discipleship and to be a family with the people who are not easy to get on with most of the time. But to be family in a way that people recognise our family likeness, that we are people of love and forgiveness, who know how to be loving and forgiving. Amen.